Hi, my name is Paul Conroy. I'm a farrier. I've been shoeing horses now for 23 years. This is the first in a series of videos that I intend to do for farriers and horse owners. So for video one, what I'd like to do today is the internal and the external structures of the horse's hoof. Like I say, it's designed for clients, this particular video, and horse owners, so I will try to keep the technical language to an absolute minimum and explain things at a really basic level. If you like the video, you want to leave a comment, please feel free, or suggest any other videos that you'd like to see. So what we'll do is we'll push straight on now into the hoof. I have in front of me a real horse's hoof. Okay, this is a dried and pickled hoof to preserve it. You can see it looks like a normal hoof on the outside, and then when we turn it around you can see all the real live internal structures within there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the external structures, some of the things that you can see on your horse's feet, okay, with anatomy in mind. First of all is obviously the main bulk of the hoof wall, which is this, the bit that we put our nails into. But I'd like you to concentrate first of all into this sort of scaly material here that you can see on the very top of the hoof. Okay, this is a structure known as the periopal. Okay, now the periopal has two functions. Its primary function is it bridges the gap between the soft skin and the hard hoof. It comes from underneath the skin to on top of the hoof, and it stops dirt and bacteria getting in on the coronary band region. Its second function is it controls the moisture content within the hoof capsule. Okay, it will take in moisture, primarily water. It will feed up into what we call the perioplic corium, and this is the first time we're going to come across this word corium. Corium is a deep layer of sensitive live skin, and it occurs around about this area here. Okay, and this is our coronary band. Okay, what it does is it takes moisture in and it feeds down into this structure here, which is the coronary corium, which again we'll come to in a moment, and which is a bit that grows the hoof wall, and that keeps the hoof wall nice and moist and supple. Farriery, often as farriers we have to remove some of the periopal in order to carry out farriery, okay, but ideally we should be leaving as much of this material on as we can. As a general rule, the bigger the horse, the more chunky and thick this periopal is. Once you get down to the more finer horses, it can be quite difficult to see. So this is the periopal, and from farriery in veterinary terms it's known as the stratum externum, which means the very outer layer of the hoof. The next thing we're going to talk about is the actual hoof wall itself, and this bit is known as the stratum medium. So if we turn it around, internally we can see it's this area here, okay, and you can actually see how thick the wall is. Okay, it's a very thick. This will vary breed to breed. Obviously cobby type horses will have quite a thick wall. Your thoroughbred types will have a slightly thinner wall, and obviously not quite as strong. The growth of the hoof wall comes from this structure here that I'm pointing to with my nail. Okay, this structure here is called the coronary corium. Now the coronary corium is a deep layer of live skin, or the dermis. Okay, and off this coronary corium, if you looked under a microscope, would be tiny little hairs. Okay, and off those hairs the horn tubules grow down the hoof wall. Okay, they are really tightly packed together, and in between the gaps of the hairs that grow the hoof wall there is another type of horn that grows, and it's called intertubular horn. So we have horn tubules, which are the actual tubes themselves, and then we have intertubular horn, which is like a cementy type of horn that binds it all together. Okay, and then it all grows down the hoof wall. Okay, and then your horse, your farrier, comes along, takes the shoes off, and then gets his snips and snips down the excess hoof, because this wall is continually growing. This growth comes from this structure called the coronary corium. The coronary corium sits in the coronary groove, and just above the coronary corium is the perioplic corium, which keeps it all nice and moist. So this area here is incredibly important when it comes to the growth of hoof for your particular horse. Okay, this is the hoof wall, or the stratum medium. There's one stratum left, and it's the stratum internum. Okay, and it's this bond here just between the bone itself, or P3, or the coffin bone. Its real term is the distal phalanx. Okay, between these two here is on the back of the hoof wall are the insensitive laminae. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about laminae once we've pointed out a few more structures inside the foot. So the very inner bit of the hoof wall here is called the stratum internum. So the actual horny hoof itself is broken down into the stratum externum, which is a periopal, the hoof wall, which is the stratum medium, and the stratum internum, which are the insensitive laminae on the back of the hoof wall. Okay, so we will come back to that in a moment, but I'd like to point out some other areas of anatomy that we can see on this foot. Remember, this is a real horse's foot, and these are real structures arranged as they are in all horses. So what we can see here, this first bone at the very top is the middle phalanx. Okay, the rest of it has been chopped off. Okay, at the coronary band. Okay, it goes up a little bit more, and then you've got the proximal phalanx above it. So this is the bottom of the middle phalanx. This bone here that you can see is the distal phalanx, or P3 coffin bone. This small bone that you can see here is the common term for it is the navicular bone, and I'm sure a lot of you have had horses with problems with this particular bone, okay, and this particular area of the foot. There is a little tiny ligament just here. Okay, this is a short interosseous ligament that joins bone to bone. Okay, and this is known as the distal impar ligament. I know it's difficult to see. It's a very, very small ligament, and again, it is another ligament that is involved in the sort of pathophysiology of navicular disease. And this is the suspensory ligament of the navicular, just at the top here. So there's two ligaments either side. This bone has an articular surface that forms a coffin joint. This is the coffin joint here, which is made up of these three bones, all make up the coffin joint, and then it has a flexor surface. And running over that flexor surface is this structure here that I'm running up. I'll show it you from the top. This structure here is the deep digital flexor tendon, okay, or the DDFT. This is a large tendon that travels all the way up the horse's leg, all the way up to the humerus, right up in the scapula, okay, and it's what is responsible for lifting the horse's leg that way, or flexing the horse's leg. It's the deep digital flexor tendon. Very, very, very important tendon. Very, very strong tendon as well. Behind it here, this mass of white that stretches all the way down here, okay, this big mass of white here is a structure called the digital cushion. Okay, the digital cushion is a fibro-fatty pad, alright, and it's largely responsible for helping to absorb concussion, and when the hoof is under load, the heels will expand, okay, which we can maybe cover in a later video on how the hoof works under load, but it basically absorbs concussion and squashes. This structure here that you can see that now is hard, remember this has been pickled, is the horny frog, okay, and when we look at our hoof underneath, well, we've only got half of one, but we all know where the frog is. This is our sole, this is our bars here, this is the hoof wall, and then we have the white line that goes round. Okay, but back to our internal, this now is your horny frog, and then on the very inner border here is our sensitive frog, or frog corium. You can't see it, it's just a thin layer that produces the actual horny frog itself. Okay, and then we have another structure here called the frog stay, which we won't go into too much detail today because I have to go into some loading. But what I'd like to talk to you today about is, or to try and get you to appreciate the stress that goes into the horse's foot, and the amount of force that can go through a horse's foot, and the beauty of equine anatomy and how things are in equilibrium within the foot. If we look at the foot again, you can see that if I stand the hoof up like that, you can see that the bone inside the hoof does not actually touch the ground, which means the entire horse's skeleton, 5, 6, 7, 800 kilos of horse, doesn't actually come in contact with the ground. Okay, now it creates a few problems within the hoof, but a healthy hoof is more than capable of dealing with it. So I'd like to take you back to school for a moment and say Newton's third law: for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, or a state of equilibrium in the foot. What happens is the descending horse's body weight is borne through the bony column and also this tendon here. Okay, now this tendon here will have a tendency to pull that bone downwards, okay, like that. So there needs to be something that opposes that pull to keep everything in equilibrium. This bond here at the front is the bond of the laminae, and you have sensitive and insensitive laminae that dovetail together. Okay, so when this is pulling this bone backwards, this opposes it. So for every action of pulling that way, there is an opposite reaction of pulling that way, and everything stays in equilibrium within the foot. So what I'd like to do now is bring you down to a series of drawings. Drawing is not my strong point. So we're going to highlight. We're going to concentrate on this drawing for now. Okay. So this is our bone. This is the horse's hoof. Okay. And we have these long finger-like projections. The red ones are the sensitive laminae, and the black ones are the insensitive laminae. Off each one of these little strands, there are what we call secondary laminae. These are primary laminae. These are secondary laminae, and this is how the hoof bonds itself to the bone all the way around the hoof capsule. So as the hoof comes round, and as the hoof comes round, we have this bond all the way around. So if we go back to our hoof again, okay, it is in this area here that we have the sensitive and the insensitive laminae. At the very bottom of the distal phalanx, these laminae go from facing that way, and then they slowly then start to turn down, where they become what we call terminal papillae, and this area here is known as the distal fringe. This is where the white line is produced, in this area, and this is our white line here. Okay, so the white line is only this little bit. Okay, as Farriery, we start our nails in the white line and then drive them up the hoof wall to come out here. Okay, so this is our sensitive and insensitive. We have our primary laminae, and then we have our secondary laminae all the way around it. So now we're going to go to this drawing, okay, with our anatomy that we can see here. In green here, with the arrows that I've drawn on, is the deep digital flexor tendon, and this has a tendency to pull this way in order to flex the leg. There has to be something that opposes this pull, and this is our laminal attachment. This drawing here is here in our laminal attachment, okay, and this is pulling in the opposite direction. So these two forces meet and are neutralized, or they neutralize each other, and everything remains happy and healthy within the foot. And the final drawing I want to show you is what the hoof wall does at the front half when load is applied to it. Okay, the solid line that you can see here is the hoof when there's no load applied to it, and the dotted line that I've drawn in shows you what happens to the hoof capsule when load is applied to it. And you can clearly see that this wall here, when load is applied to it, becomes bent inwards. Okay, and it's the pull of the tendon here, and the bond of the laminae, which cause the hoof wall to be pulled inwards as weight is borne across the laminae and then down to the ground, which is why diseases such as laminitis are such painful and difficult diseases to treat. And I intend to do some videos on laminitis and navicular and so on and so forth. So that covers pretty much what I want to do today. It's just a basic brief introduction to, like I say, some of the structures within the hoof, because as clients often that is all you get to see. Okay, and we can be guilty, our clients can be guilty of thinking that this is just a block of wood. Okay, but hopefully when you turn it around and you see the amount of anatomy, which we haven't really even touched the surface of, functionality, you'll see that there is quite a lot going on within the hoof capsule. So I hope you found that informative. Like I say, leave any comments below, suggest any more videos that you'd like to see, and I intend to, or the plan is to do some more videos. Okay, thank you for watching.